The sky cracked open with a scream of lightning, illuminating the blood-soaked ground below. A desperate mother clutched her feverish child, their skin soaked in rain and terror. Fire licked the edge of the forest, wild and out of control, pushed by dry winds and the wrath of the earth. Moments before, their camp had been peaceful, the morning quiet filled with the hum of insects and the laughter of children. Now, chaos ruled. "Corey," the young hunter shouted, "the river! Get to the river!" as he dragged a limp elder across the muddy clearing. Behind them, beasts howled, wolves driven mad by fire or hunger. The tribe was scattering, their unity torn apart by panic. Elder Nari stumbled and fell, whispering, "This land rejects us." In a single morning, their home had become a battlefield, and survival was no longer about hunting. It was about escape. The great journey had not been chosen. It had been forced upon them by flame and fear. When the flames finally relented, silence fell like ash. What remained was ruin, charred earth, skeletal trees, and a handful of survivors huddled near the riverbank. Corey sat beside the dying fire, eyes vacant, blood on his knuckles. No one spoke. Beside him, Elder Nari's body had been laid with care, wrapped in bark and reed. "She was our memory," whispered Yala, the tribe's healer. "Now we wander blind." The youngest wept quietly. The old stared into the darkness. A sense of exile hung thick in the smoke-scented air. No food, no shelter, no home. Only the river, glistening in the pale light of dawn, offered the illusion of direction. Corey rose slowly. "We follow the water," he said, voice hoarse. There was no plan, only motion. Behind them lay loss. Ahead, uncertainty. The great migration had begun. The morning brought the sounds of suffering, coughs, groans, whispered prayers. The tribe moved slowly, scavenging through the wreckage for anything usable. Burnt bones, shards of clay, a half-broken spear. Corey found a bundle of dried roots, miraculously untouched, and handed it to Yala. "This might help the children." Yala nodded, her hands trembling as she took it. Even the sky seemed bruised, a dull gray stretching endlessly above them. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, just the slow shuffle of feet and the occasional sob. Corey looked toward the forest's edge where smoke still curled lazily into the sky. It was clear they could not stay. Not here, not now. The land had become haunted by flame, by fear, by the voices of the lost. By mid-morning, the decision was clear. They would move east, downstream. The land of air was unknown, but it offered hope, hope of water, of game, of shelter. The elders sat in a circle, what few remained, whispering prayers to spirits of fire and rain. Children clung to their mothers. Spears were checked, packs strapped together with vines and sinew. "We must leave before the sun climbs high," Corey said. "The heat will rise, and the smell of death brings predators." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. As the first steps were taken, a hush fell across the camp. It felt like a funeral march, one foot after another, away from what was, toward what could be. As they walked, the land changed. The blackened forest gave way to tall golden grasses, gently waving in the morning wind. The river widened, flanked by smooth stones and reeds that whispered secrets to the breeze. For a moment, silence returned. Natural, not fearful. A small boy ran ahead, chasing a dragonfly. Laughter rose unexpectedly, delicate and brief. Yala smiled through her grief. "Life still wants us," she murmured. Corey looked at the boy, his own heart tightening. "Then we'll keep moving," he replied. Behind them, the smoke still rose like a distant ghost. But ahead, movement, warmth, and the first breath of possibility. The migration began slowly, a cautious procession along the river's winding path. Hunger gnawed at bellies like a second heartbeat. The children, once lively, now walked in silence, their thin legs wobbly. Corey led from the front, scanning every sound in the reeds. Yala followed close behind, checking each child's breath, pressing roots to parched lips. The forest beside them whispered with unseen life, rustles, chirps, and distant growls. "We are being watched," said Maku, a seasoned tracker with piercing eyes. Corey nodded. "Stay tight, move quiet." Every step felt borrowed, as though nature might revoke its mercy at any moment. The river gave them direction, but not safety. The wilderness ahead was unfamiliar, and in it, danger thrived in every shadow. Behind them was ruin, but ahead could be worse. Still, they walked, driven by need, bound by hope. As dusk approached, they reached a clearing surrounded by ancient trees. The river pooled into a calm basin, and for the first time in days, birds sang. The tribe stopped, bodies slumping to the ground in relief. Yala knelt by the water, filling woven gourds, whispering a prayer of thanks. Corey remained standing, eyes scanning the tree line. "We rest, but no fires," he said. "Smoke will betray us." Maku climbed a low ridge, listening, sniffing the air. "Too quiet," he muttered. The tribe huddled together under canopies of leaves, wrapped in furs. A mother hummed to her baby. An old man muttered an old tale. Sleep came lightly, if at all. Even in peace, fear held its place beside them, like an uninvited guest. The wild did not welcome them. It merely tolerated their presence, for now. The next morning brought a chilling discovery. Near the water's edge, deep claw marks scarred the muddy earth, fresh, sharp, deliberate. "Not wolf," Maku said, crouching beside them. "Something larger." Panic rippled through the tribe. Children were pulled closer. Spears were clutched tighter. Corey narrowed his eyes toward the forest, where silence had returned like a threat. "We can't stay," he said. "This place belongs to something else." Yala argued. "The children need rest." Corey answered softly, "And they need to live." That morning, they left without eating. The tracks haunted their thoughts as they moved. What creature left such marks? Was it watching them now? The journey became faster, more frantic, as if the ground behind them had become a mouth ready to swallow them whole. By midday, the river cut through unfamiliar terrain. Narrow ravines and jagged cliffs towered above them. The path was treacherous, and footing uncertain. A child slipped and scraped his leg. His cries echoed off the stone walls. "Carry him," Corey ordered. He lifted the boy onto his back and pushed forward. A rock slide earlier had blocked part of the trail, forcing them to scale a steep slope. Some lost their grip, bruising limbs and tearing skin. But no one stopped. They climbed with teeth clenched and hearts pounding. From above, the land looked alien. Bone-white cliffs, crooked trees, strange birds circling. It was a place untouched by their kind. "This is Death's Ridge," whispered one of the elders. Corey answered, "Then we walk through death to find life." And so they did. That night, the tribe found shelter in a shallow cave etched into the side of a cliff. It was barely enough to hold them, but it kept the wind at bay. Exhaustion settled deep into their bones. Yala tended wounds with chewed herbs. Corey sat at the entrance, staring into the night. Stars flickered above like ancient eyes. "We survived another day," he whispered to no one. From within the cave, a child asked, "Will we find a new home?" Corey didn't turn. "Yes," he said, though he wasn't certain. Silence stretched between the rocks, filled only by the whisper of the wind. Somewhere in the distance, an animal cried out, long, hollow, and low. It didn't sound like anything they'd ever heard. Corey's hand tightened on his spear. The journey was only beginning. The following day brought something entirely different. A vast, sun-scorched plain stretching endlessly to the horizon. The forest behind them had vanished, replaced by open sky and golden dust. The wind carried no shade, only heat. Their skin burned. Their eyes stung. Corey shielded his face and muttered, "We'll be seen for miles." Maku replied, "And have nowhere to hide." The tribe moved in single file, their footprints marking a wavering line across the earth. Overhead, vultures circled. The children cried for water, but the gourds were nearly empty. Even Yala struggled to stay upright. "There's nothing here," she whispered. "Only distance." Still, they pressed on. To stop was death. The sun loomed like a god above them, watchful, merciless. By midday, silence fell, not from peace, but from pure, blistered fatigue. Midway through the plain, they stumbled upon something strange: bones. Dozens of them, bleached white by the sun, arranged unnaturally in a semicircle. Animal remains, but large, too large. Maku crouched beside them, lifting a heavy jawbone with jagged teeth. "This wasn't scavenged," he said. "It was left as warning." Yala murmured a protective chant, her fingers touching her chest. Corey scanned the horizon. No movement, no life. Just wind and bone. "We move quickly." "Eyes up," he ordered. The children were hurried past the site, but curiosity lingered in their glances. The air grew colder despite the sun, like the land remembered death. Even the vultures kept their distance. Whatever had done this, it was not hunger. It was dominance. A message carved into silence. Later that evening, a distant shape emerged, low trees clustering on the horizon, swaying gently in the dying light. Hope surged. "A grove!" someone shouted. They quickened their pace, driven by the scent of green. As they neared, they found shade, and more importantly, water. A trickling spring flowed through the roots of the trees. The tribe collapsed into relief, cupping their hands, splashing their faces. Laughter broke out for the first time in days. Corey knelt and touched the cool stream, whispering, "We live again." But even as they drank, Maku's eyes didn't leave the edge of the grove. "Something lives here," he muttered. Tracks near the water were deep and fresh. But for one night, they chose not to fear. They chose to breathe. Night fell soft and warm. The grove whispered with life. Crickets, rustling leaves, distant bird calls. Corey sat with Yala, watching children fall asleep, curled around each other. "They laughed today," she said, tears in her eyes. Corey nodded. "Tomorrow may not let them." Then came the sound. A heavy footstep. Then another. From the shadows beyond the trees, a pair of glowing eyes stared back. Something massive, something patient. It did not growl. It didn't charge. It simply watched. Corey rose, spear in hand, heart pounding. The creature remained still. Yala whispered, "It waits for us to leave." Corey replied, "Or to fail." They lit no fire. No one slept. The eyes vanished by dawn. But no one forgot them. At sunrise, they left the grove without a word. Fear clung to their backs like a shadow. The plains continued, rising into hills with jagged rocks and sharp winds. By midday, the tribe was forced to split around a narrow canyon. Corey took half the group across a narrow ridge. The others followed a lower path. Suddenly, a scream echoed. One of the children slipped, tumbling down the incline. Corey dropped his pack and scrambled down, heart hammering. The boy lay still, blood pooling beneath his head. Yala reached him, hands trembling. "He's gone," she whispered. The tribe stood silent. The boy's mother wailed, crumbling into the dust. Corey looked to the sky, jaw clenched. No more, he swore. But the journey was not done. The canyon had taken its price. The path narrowed as the tribe entered a canyon of black stone, walls rising high and cold on either side. Shadows stretched like claws across their faces. No wind, no birds, only silence. Corey led with tightened grip on his spear, each step echoing like a warning. Maku whispered, "This place was made for death." The children clung to their mothers, eyes wide with dread. They passed remnants, shattered bones, broken stone tools, symbols carved into walls too ancient to understand. "People died here," said Yala. "Long before us." Corey said nothing. His jaw was set. His pace did not slow. This canyon tested more than their strength. It fed on fear, stretched time, twisted trust. In the narrow dark, even whispers sounded like betrayal. Something would break here. And it began with silence. They camped in the canyon that night, pressed against the wall like prey hiding from a storm. A quiet argument broke out between two young hunters. One accused the other of hoarding dried roots. The voices rose. Corey stepped in, face hard. "We die together, or not at all," he said. But the seed of division had been planted. Later, while most slept, one of the hunters vanished. His name was Tehu. They searched at first light, no tracks, no blood, no sign. "He's gone," Maku said flatly. The canyon swallowed him. Fear twisted into suspicion. "He left," said one. "Or was taken," said another. The tribe began to glance sideways at one another. Trust, once vital, now felt dangerous. And in the darkness of the canyon, every breath felt watched. By mid-morning, the canyon split. Two paths, one wide and sunlit, the other narrow and dark. The tribe paused, uncertain. Light could be illusion, warned Yala. Or salvation, countered Corey. The debate grew sharp. Some wanted to follow Corey. Others argued for the safer-seeming path. The moment shattered when a woman named Suna stepped toward the lighted path with her child. "I won't let fear lead me," she said. Several followed her. Just like that, the tribe split. Corey's heart twisted. "We are stronger together," he called. But they were already walking away. Yala touched his shoulder. They must choose their own way. The canyon felt colder as half the group vanished around the bend. And for the first time, Corey felt like a leader who had failed. The group that followed the light never returned. Days passed. Then one dawn, the wind changed, and the cries came, echoing faintly, distant and wrong. Corey and Maku climbed a ridge and saw it, broken bodies scattered near the canyon's edge. No sign of fire, no tracks, just stillness. Yala wept openly. Corey turned away, fists clenched. "We said we would stay together," he whispered, haunted. The others stood below, watching his face for direction. But Corey could only stare at the rocks. That day he carried the smallest child, Suna's son, on his back in silence. The tribe moved again, slower, quieter. Grief was no longer new. It was expected, like the setting of the sun. The canyon had taken its toll. That night, Corey built a fire. The first since the migration began. He set it ablaze not for warmth, but for remembrance. Flames danced in silence as the tribe gathered. No songs, no chants, just presence. Yala placed small stones in a circle around the fire, one for each soul lost. The children watched with wide, unblinking eyes. Corey spoke at last. "We carried them, every step, every breath." He looked around, firelight flickering on hollow faces. "We walk for them now." For the first time in weeks, unity returned, not through comfort, but through shared sorrow. The canyon watched its walls lit by fires glow, but it could not claim what burned in their hearts. Not anymore. The tribe, fractured but not broken, rose with the flames. Beyond the canyon, the land opened into a wide basin where the sky stretched vast and blue. The tribe stood at its edge, silent. There, carved into the rock wall of a cliff, were markings, not natural, not random. Handprints. Shapes. Scenes. It was a message from others who had once passed through. Yala ran her fingers over the ancient ochre stains. "Hello. They came this way," she whispered. "They survived." Corey looked on, humbled. These were signs of those who had walked before them, who had faced fire, hunger, fear, and endured. For the first time, their journey didn't feel like exile. It felt like legacy. "We are not the first," Corey said quietly. "We won't be the last." They made camp below the wall. That night, children slept beneath ancestors' hands. The next day, the land gifted them something unexpected: a herd. Dozens of gazelle grazing peacefully near a stream. Maku froze, eyes wide. "We'll hunt," he whispered. Cory nodded. Spears were readied, plans whispered. It would be their first coordinated hunt since the fires. The men and women fanned out, circling carefully. Tension crackled in the air. A single mistake could mean failure, or death. Then Cory gave the signal. A cry echoed, and the tribe charged. Chaos erupted. Dust and hooves thundered. Maku's spear struck true. A young woman named Lena brought one down with sheer force. When it was over, 3 animals lay still. Cheers burst forth, raw and joyous. Bloodied but triumphant, they returned to camp. That night, for the first time in moons, they feasted. Around the fire, the scent of roasted meat filled the air. Laughter returned. Even music, rhythmic tapping of bones against stone. Children mimicked the hunt, pretending to throw spears. Yala braided a young girl's hair and sang softly in a forgotten tongue. Cory sat beside Maku, both smiling in rare silence. "We lived today," Maku said. Cory replied, "We lived like them." He nodded toward the painted cliff. In that moment, something shifted. Not just survival, but memory. The tribe began to carve symbols of their own into a nearby rock. Fire curtain, gazelle, a figure holding a child. They were writing their journey, marking proof of their passage. "Now they'll know we were here," whispered Yala. "Even if we don't return." Hope had returned, but so had purpose. At dawn, Cory was awakened by a distant cry, sharp, panicked. He rushed to the ridge above their camp and froze. Smoke. Not from their fire. From beyond the basin. Black plumes rising fast. Maku joined him, eyes narrowing. "Another fire?" Cory shook his head. "No. Another tribe." The decision was not simple. Do they approach? Do they hide? But something deeper stirred in Cory. Curiosity, kinship, risk. "We see who they are," he said. Armed with spears and caution, a group set off toward the smoke. The walk was long and silent. When they reached the crest, they saw them, figures, just like them, gathered near a small fire. Not enemies, not beasts, people. And they had children too. For a long moment, no one moved. Then one of them raised a hand in greeting. "Nah." What followed was not war, but wonder. Slowly, both groups approached, hands raised, voices low. Language was different, but the eyes were the same. Tired, cautious, curious. Children peeked from behind legs. Yala offered food. An elder from the other tribe knelt and drew shapes in the dirt. Mountains, water, paths. Cory understood. They had maps, knowledge, stories, and they were willing to share. It was the first time Cory saw a future beyond movement. "We don't have to be alone," he whispered. That night, the 2 tribes sat by the same fire. 2 circles of strangers, learning to become one. Laughter crossed the gap first. Then music. Then names. The migration had given them more than survival. It had brought them connection. It had brought them kin. The merging of the 2 tribes brought new life, new songs, new stories, new hands to hunt and build. But it also brought challenge. 1 river, 2 leaders. Differences in belief, in ritual, in language. Cory found himself in unfamiliar terrain, not of earth, but of diplomacy. A respected elder from the 2nd tribe, named Ralik, questioned every decision. "Why move? Why not build here?" Cory replied, "Because here's not enough." Disagreements brewed like distant thunder. Yet the children played as if borders never existed. Yala observed, They teach us what we forget. Corey began to listen more than he spoke. Around shared fires, compromise took root. Two songs became one. Two paths began to braid. And for the first time, the tribe didn't just survive. They began to shape a future. Innovation was born from necessity. With pooled knowledge, they began crafting tools not just to hunt, but to build. Ralik introduced a method for shaping stone with bone hammers. Lena, quick and curious, refined it further. Fire pits became controlled, lasting longer into the night. Corey watched as young ones learned to shape spearheads, their hands guided by elders from both tribes. Yala began teaching how to bind wounds with layers of moss and ash. What was once survival had evolved into structure, into craft, into purpose. "We're not just living," Corey said to Yala. "We're becoming." The camp pulsed with activity, not panic. For the first time, their days were not filled with fear, but with focus. They were no longer just escaping death. They were building something worth living for. But even as unity grew, nature tested them again. Dark clouds rolled in, and by evening, a violent storm crashed over the camp. Tents of reed and hide tore loose. Fires died. Trees bent and cracked. Corey shouted above the wind, "Hold together! Shield the children!" Lightning split the sky, revealing chaos, figures struggling to anchor shelter, others lifting those who fell. A boulder slid loose from a hill, crashing near the sleeping area. Ralik and Corey joined forces, digging out two trapped elders with bare hands. When dawn came, soaked and shivering, they had lost little, but nearly everything. The storm had not broken them. It had bound them tighter. In the aftermath, Ralik approached Corey, offered a single nod. No words. But it was enough. Respect had been earned, through trial, not taught. In the days that followed the storm, something remarkable happened. New paths were carved, not in the earth, but in thought. Ralik taught the children to read cloud shapes, to sense the coming weather. Yala introduced fire-roasted roots that boosted strength. A young boy from the second tribe invented a signal using bird calls. Lena began crafting bowls from hardened clay. The camp evolved. No longer temporary, no longer a waypoint. "Is this home?" a child asked Corey. He looked around, at the tools, the laughter, the rising structure of their first shelter built of stone and wood. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "It could be." There was no ceremony, no proclamation. But beneath the tree where the first fire burned, they began to live, not just pass through. At sunset they gathered, two tribes now one. A ring was formed around the fire. No war cries, no speeches, just a rhythm tapped on stones. Slowly, voices rose, different languages blending. Yala stepped forward and placed her hand on the earth. Others followed, pressing their palms into soft clay. A new wall began, marked not by ancient hands, but their own. Ralik placed the final handprint beside Corey's. Silence fell. "We mark this not to say we arrived," Corey said, voice low, "but that we endured." Children laughed. Flames crackled. Stars emerged above, brighter than ever before. This was not the end of the migration, but it was the end of fear, of isolation. They were no longer running. They were becoming. And the world, vast and wild, now held their mark. The first harvest came quietly. Wild roots, fresh berries, trapped game. It wasn't abundance, but it was enough. Enough to share, enough to store. The air turned cooler as the seasons shifted, and the tribe adapted. They tanned hides, dug storage pits, and sang while working. Children were no longer weak with hunger. Elders no longer looked to the sky with fear. In the distance, a mountain range loomed, unreachable before, now symbolic of how far they'd come. Corey stood atop a ridge and watched the camp bustle below. "We made it," he said aloud. Yala approached. "We're still making it," she replied. Beneath them, the land no longer felt like an enemy. It had become familiar. A place of story. A place they could one day call home, not because it was easy, but because they had earned it. A sudden cry broke the calm. Lena had gone into labor. The entire camp stirred. Elders prepared hot stones and water, while women surrounded her with practiced calm. Corey stood outside the shelter, nerves stretched tight. "She is strong," Yala assured him. Like those before her. Hours passed. The sun dipped low, casting orange light across tense faces. Then a new sound, a baby's wail, loud and defiant. Relief flooded the tribe like a wave. Laughter erupted, joyful and unrestrained. Corey entered, finding Lena exhausted but smiling, the child in her arms. "A daughter," she whispered. The infant's eyes opened, small, alert, unafraid. Yala placed her hand on the girl's forehead. "Born of fire and stone." This child would never remember the migration, but she would live in the world it made possible. As the moon rose high, the tribe gathered for the naming. No grand altar, no ancient chant, just fire and family. Ralik stepped forward and spoke in his dialect, and Corey translated. "This child carries us all." The baby was named Syra, meaning spark. A torch lit from the past, burning into the future. One by one, tribe members placed small objects into a woven basket beside her. A carved bead, a piece of obsidian, a sliver of bone flute. Offerings of memory, each soul. "Let her never forget that we were once lost," said Yala, "so that she may never be." The fire crackled. Stars shimmered. The tribe had known death, fear, exile. Now they knew what it meant to give something new to the world. Something lasting. The days grew shorter, the air cooler, but the camp remained strong. Hunters returned with meat. Firewood was stacked high. And Sarah thrived, her laughter echoing across the clearing. One afternoon, she stood, unsteady, curious, and took her first step. The entire camp fell silent. Corey watched from afar, heart caught in his throat. Yala knelt beside the child, hands outstretched but not touching, allowing her to fall and rise again. "She walks," someone whispered. But it wasn't just a moment, it was a symbol. They had walked across continents, through fire, through fear. Now, the smallest among them walked into a world that was no longer fleeing, but standing. Sira fell forward and giggled. The tribe erupted in soft laughter. This was their future, bold, fragile, and unstoppable. At twilight, Corey returned to the painted cliff. Alone. The ancient hands were still there, faded but eternal. He raised his own, now scarred and rough, and placed it beside them. A moment of stillness. Then, he dipped his fingers in ochre and pressed his hand on the blank stone below. His mark joined theirs, not as a survivor, but as a builder. Behind him, laughter echoed. Cyrus, Yalas, the tribes. A family now. A people. He turned, and in that single glance, saw the weight of the past dissolve into something brighter. The migration was never meant to end. It was meant to begin. Not of fleeing, but of becoming. Corey walked back toward the firelight, the stars above him, the land behind him, and the future in every footstep.